Hi and welcome to the conference. My name is Oleksii Maievskyi and I am working on the Luxoft company. I have more than 5 year extending experience in .NET, and effectively today we will talk about the Blazor stuff. Uh, Essentially, one of my last project was about the Blazor, and we working on this project and build the most of the from the beginning the website, and that's actually the UI framework that we will actually looking deeper into the through the conference today. I also was involved in some different projects between some financial stuff, automotive, insurance, building reconstruction, etc. And as I mentioned, one of my last project was about the Blazor. And at the end, I hope that we will cover all the topics related to the getting started on the Blazor. And then you will find out how you actually going to work with the Blazor, going to create templates, uh, make some code, debugging, etc. And we also look through the main of the frameworks that we are working with. Let me go through the topics that we actually will highlight today. That's the history and overview. So we will quickly go through how the Blazor is actually goes through the .NET framework, trying to create the template, and we'll see the structure of the code. We will review the MudBlazor and Radzen as the main frameworks, and we'll go through the testing. And one of the important framework of the test is actually Bunit, and I'm sure that B is actually related to the Blazor. Okay, let's start. As I mentioned, let's start from the history and overview. So first of all, we should know that Blazor was first introduced in the experimental project by Microsoft in 2016, 17, but officially it was released as part of the .NET Core in 2018. And that actually was the first iteration of the Blazor, and to be honest, it's not so widespread at the moment, but at least it's still growing and still grow up with the new features ongoing. And as you can see, we have a huge amount of features and changes for Blazor will be presented on the upcoming .NET conference in November on 2023. Of course, we can say that, to be honest, from the .NET 6, it was the most popular Blazor stuff because between the .NET 6 and .NET 7 that was introduced in .NET MAUI, that was opened a new type of Blazor, which called hybrid. So we will talk about the types of the Blazor a bit later right now. But we should know that the Blazor is actually the consistent of the framework, which combine the working with the code and working with the UI in the same time, and nothing to separate between these actually parts on the Visual Studio and the .NET framework. Let's go through the overview by the high level. So Blazor is a modern web development framework, and it allows the developer to build interactive applications using C# instead of traditional JavaScript. Let me think of this. So if we will compare between the modern UI JavaScript frameworks, which like Angular, React, and Vue.js. Okay, so we have like a models. I'm sure you're aware of that, how it actually works. We have UI part, we have a service part, and we have some DB stuff, which are all of this part are separate. So we have 3 layers from one into second and second into third. So it goes through one by one and interact to get the data, to override some data, to manipulate with the data. So on Blazor stuff, we have only 2 parts. When the first UI and the second actually service or client side is combined together. It's easy to manipulate, it's easy to work, and it's of course for me it's really it's really cool stuff that you not spend time to build some kind of one service layer, another service layer, UI layer. This actually combines together and works together. We will see it later on the one of the demos. Of course, Blazor apps are composed to reusable web UI components implemented C#, HTML, and CSS. That's what we're actually talking about. It enables full-stack development with .NET, provide a simple way to write code for both client-side and server-side scenarios. That's exactly what we discussed. And to be honest, if we talk about the Blazor, we should think of that Blazor is actually some kind of extendable feature of the ASP.NET. There have very similar cases of working, but of course there is a lot of differences. And if you're familiar with ASP.NET, you will see it definitely. Yeah, let's move on. Let's go through the types of the WebAssembly. So we have two main types, to be honest, especially right now. So we have WebAssembly and the server. So the difference between them, that the WebAssembly is give you the single page application. I'm sure you're aware of how it's actually working with. The SPA framework is builds you the one application in one. So it's client-side web apps.NET. So WebAssembly works directly in the browser, meaning that the Blazor code move out to the Chrome or Edge whenever your browser working with, and actually working exactly inside it. For example, instead of the server side, when all the components and all the application layer moving to the service component and to the server side, and it's directed via a single R. But as far as I know, more or less 70% of the applications that are working right now in the production, it's actually like a WebAssembly. It's a single page application. This is the most common framework, and this is what we're actually talking about today, and we'll see how it works. As also one of the difference that server is actually the views on the server project is rendered, and every line going to interact with the HTML and then rendering to the server to see the view instance and do the application array and get the information back. So it's single R stuff, and that's actually most of the one of the difference. But you can see that the templates, for example, in Visual Studio, is really close to the WebAssembly. So I think that right now we will see some demo and create the new Blazor project from the Visual Studio template. Okay, let me switch my application to Visual Studio. I have already prepared for Visual Studio. We will create a new project just to see how it works. Let me type the Blazor, and we will see kind of templates that we will actually can have. As you can see here, we just let's wait for a minute. Blazor server app we should have, and Blazor WebAssembly app. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Looks like something still ongoing. Create a new template. Yes, let's search for Blazor. Okay, we have the Blazor server app, WebAssembly app, and some other empty templates that actually Visual Studio provides us to create. Also, we have some class library eraser, but we will discuss it later. This is actually the one part of the template inside the whole structure of the template. Let's go to the WebAssembly and create a new one. Let me call it Blazor Assemble Application and click on Next. Okay, let's choose the framework .NET 7 because we have the latest .NET 7 right now. Let's click on Create. And let's wait a couple of minutes, or maybe less, just to create the project. So as you can see, just creating the template, it's actually the same that you have for ASP.NET or some other templates that you're working with. Really close to the nothing specific. You don't need to enter anything to provide more information, etc. And on the right side, you can see the Blazor application as was created. Okay, let's go through the structure of the solution itself. So the main entry point is the program CS class. That's fine. So we have three folders here. Main it's a www root where we have all the classes for CSS HTML located here. Also we have pages and shared folder where we have pages as examples of counter fetch data in index Razor pages. We can see it on our application that will be run. Really close to the Blazor application that we have on ASP.NET Core. So it's just the templates, really default templates with the dummy data, and main layout, navigation menu, and server prompt Razor. Okay, so what is the difference between the WebAssembly framework and server framework? The only one on server framework we have one more folder which called data. That's exactly the place when you will insert your definitions for working with the server through the single R, where you integrate with the server and drop or push the data into. That's only the case. So it's easy to switch between the Blazor WebAssembly and to server and back. So it's nothing related to something more significant way. So it's easy to switch if you need it, of course. But in the most of the cases, you don't need it. It will be most of the case will be, as I mentioned, WebAssembly as a single page application. And let's do not go through the code. Let's see how it actually look like. So I will run it and to show you the example of how it's actually application look like out of the box and what .NET provide us to see and to work with, and to be honest, to start with. Of course, we will go through the Razor pages, and to be honest, Blazor contains not the Razor page. ASP.NET is a Razor page, but the Blazor contains the Razor component. Now it's called as a component. It's a bit different one, but it's most of the cases it's actually the same meaning, the same it's not different structure of the code, but it's really close to the same providing stuff there. Okay, let me see if we have something to work. Okay, we have the local host working, and interesting part here is that we will review this kind of manipulating of this loading part. I will show you how it works. This is the new feature in .NET 7. It was not presented in .NET 6, but .NET 7 already have it. Okay, that's the really basic template application from the Blazor. As we mentioned, we have the counter and the fetch data as an examples. We have some kind of whole application. You can interact with the left side tab navigation menu. So we have tabs like counter and fetch data. So counter just contain just a simple name of the counter. You can click on the button and it will actually extend some kind of counter here. And we have some fetch data with the dummy data stored on some of the files or hard coded somewhere on the template, as is actually usual stuff for the Microsoft and for the Visual Studio templates. Now let's make a bit change and playing with the code. But before we make it, let's go through the Razor component as it is. Let me open the counter and I will show you what is exactly the Razor component is. As you remember, or maybe as you know, the ASP.NET Razor page contains two files, which is extension .kshtml and kshtml.cs. So that's the two files in one, which combine it together when it builds. One file is actually related to the UI stuff, and .ch/html.ch contains the contains logic, background logic for that's actually UI. Razor component, it's a bit combined stuff, so it works together. As you can see here on the top of the page, we actually have the UI component stuff, and we can push it just HTML code. We can also push here the JavaScript code here in some script tag, etc. A lot of stuff here, and on the code section, we will actually place this C# code. That's actually it. That's the main structure of this kind of a counter. As you can see here, that's actually represent this kind of code. Let's a bit modify it quickly, and you will see how it's easy to do. For example, we have a button with incremental stuff. Let's copy it and create the button with the reset stuff. For example, we'll reset the counter. So let's rename it to reset. Let me make it not the primary. Let me make it maybe secondary, because this is basically not the primary button, and we will change the code and then click handles to reset counter. Now we need just to create this kind of reset counter. Of course, it's easy to do. You can just specify in the code the method for reset counter. It will be, I'm sure it will be void. So it's simple one, reset counter. Let me copy it, and we will see that we will set it as a counter count, and that kind of variable will set it to null. Let me show it, equals to null. That's it. That's actually the whole implementation and nothing specific. Let me run it and to see it builds correctly. Something wrong, reset counter. Okay, I forgot the brackets. Okay. Let me run it and we will see what is actually changed here. Okay, if the application restarts, and you see that we have secondary button which called reset. For example, if you click on the increasing number of the counter, you can easily to click on reset and it goes to 0, and you can do it any time, and it will work. Now let's work with the fetch data. So fetch data is just a grid represent you the information going that comes through different sources. Of course, it can be just SQL data, it can be API, it can be third-party API, it can be the files, etc. All of this stuff can be pushed here. So it's just a simple HTML application and HTML fetch data table. As you can see here, we have a table, tr, th, nothing specific, and we have for each loop inside. When it's at the add, we can go through to each some kind of forecast which coming from this kind of file. So it's really, really specific. But the interesting part here is that let's say that we have component as a counter and we can set the counter here. For example, I want to have counter inside the fetch data view or the page. Okay, we can save it, set this as a counter. Let me run the application. It will build quickly. And that's actually, let me see what's happened with the forecast. It will restart and I have the counter here. Okay, so I'm not make any significant changes on the fetch data code and the fetch data page. I just push the component counter or the Razor component, how it's actually treated, the Microsoft treated as a Razor component, so I can push it directly to the fetch data. Of course, it's pleasant to the initial page, but it makes the copy of the counter here, and we can insert as much counters as we want. We can make it 3 or 4, etc. It will be actually placed accordingly. At the same time, for example, if you want to move the code from the fetch data to the back to the counter, and you want to have fetch data table into the counter, it's easily to do. You just, as you can see here, we have 4 counters here, and then we can just remove them and make the. Let me do it quickly. Just a representation layer. Let me remove these counters. And let me go to the counter and insert inside it up down to the counter functionality. I will insert the fetch data and run it. And what we will see at the end. So essentially, I expecting that it will remove all my counters with the fetch data, but the further forecast fetch data Razor component make the copy and move to the counter. And that's actually easy for interact, and it's easy to work with. You can create some few Razor component and insert it whenever you want and whenever actually required through all the requirements you need. Okay, that's actually all from the. Okay, let me also show you the www root folder. So this is simple stuff. So we have some data coming from the JSON, and we have some application CSS where they stored all the information related to the startup of the project. Now, the interesting part here is actually this one. We have the load in progress cycle. This is the new feature on .NET, and I will show it later on my next demo page. So we will show directly they introduced into the CSS the variables, as you can see here, and actually CSS now able to work with, which I was surprised, and it's really cool stuff. Okay, that's it for this for now. Let me go to my presentation and we will move further. So right now I want to show you let me switch to the MudBlazor and the MudBlazor and Radzen frameworks. So again, we have much more frameworks for the Blazor. Maybe you know them. They are related to, they called also Telerik UI for Blazor, Sync Fusion, and etc. But these two that actually, these two that I'm working with on my last project, and that I'm familiar with, I will show you the structure of the code, the structure of these kind of frameworks that we can use on the Blazor. The difference between these two is actually MudBlazor is free to use, so it's nothing to pay, and just you can just download NuGet package and you can use that component. We have the website, as you can see on the right side. You can copy the data from this website and use it. So it's ready to use. All components are in place. They are supported by developers. They have some kind of support there. You can just ask your questions. And they have some threads on the GitHub, and on their site you can specify some bugs if you want kinds of. So MudBlazor is for me is like for developers by developers. You know, they are also supported by the guys who are actually working with. So it's free to use, as I mentioned. And another part is actually Radzen. So this one is kind tricky one because this is free for commercial use, but it's paid for professional and more significant way of using. So, but if you want to grab some component and just insert it in, or like experimental stuff, or you just need, or just these components, for example, like graphics or cars, or some, you need some specific checkbox that will have it in the Radzen, but not present in the MudBlazor, and actually CSS, HTML not allows you to build with. That's actually the good thing to check and to actually get the component and insert it. So of course, this is the just download the NuGet and start working with it. And also in this kind of demo, then we will discuss, and I will show you the really simple example of the Blazor testing unit. So it's called BUnit. That's the testing library exactly specific for the Blazor components. So it builds on top of the most framework, testing framework, which is known as XUnit and Unit, MSTS. It runs only for the Blazor components. And what is actually doing, it's make some wrapper of the page. If you create some BUnit test of one of the page, and it's wrap the page and make the simulation on this page. Of course, it uses 3A usage, which is act a certain range. I will show you the examples. We have the website, you can visit it, and it will actually present it how it works, but I will give you some really basic example of this kind of testing stuff. Okay, let's go through the demo. So for this demo, I especially installing the .NET 8 preview as a framework, and I'm installing the Visual Studio as a 2022 as also as preview to work exactly with the .NET 8. Because if you would, for example, install the .NET preview framework, but you will have not preview Visual Studio, it will not work. It will not cover the Blazor application. I have prepared this stuff for you in advance. It also contains counter and fetch data. I created some kind of getting the data from another source. I've inserted the new file, which called test data. I come from the, it actually comes from the internet just to, as experimental stuff, as a dummy data, I would say. There's a lot of stuff here. So we have just a JSON with information. We have some ID, number, contact name, sign, price, some specific is active or not, address, email, and registered. So it's really dummy data just to show you how the actually Blazor interacts with kind of data in that way. Let me also show you that this solution right now builds in .NET 8, and that so as far as we know, Microsoft will present .NET 8 in November this year, so it will be in a month. Okay, so we have .NET 8 and some new features that are not present in .NET 7 I will show you here today. But before, let's start from the frameworks that we discussed and actually presented on the presentation. So what is MudBlazor? For MudBlazor, I prepared the page which called MudBlazor data. Let me go through the the UI stuff first. We will observe the functionality and grids that I presented for you for two of the frameworks. First, we'll present the MudBlazor, then I will present you the Radzen and how Radzen represent this kind of data that I've inserted here. And then I will show you what is actually .NET 8 will contain. It will contain the QuickGrid. There's the QuickGrid. There's the new powerful features that potentially the Microsoft make some stuff on the few years, maybe last few years they work on this QuickGrid, and the main purpose of this QuickGrid is just actually replace more of the stuff from the different frameworks like MudBlazor, Radzen, Telerik. So we get this component from this kind of frameworks, but now Microsoft just focus on their own component, which actually should cover and should replace it in some out of way. And I will show you how it works. At least it will be like a demo presentation before they will announce it. So it's really interesting. Okay, let me show you the fetch data, for example. It's close the same data. So I added 3 more tabs here, which related to MudBlazor data, Radzen data, and the QuickGrid. So we'll develop QuickGrid together. Okay, what is happening in the MudBlazor? You can see here out of the box, when you install the MudBlazor NuGet package, you will have some kind of predefined component. So we have the grid, and this information pushed here into this grid and a lot of the features is actually available for us. For example, we can search and we can specify the search component and search the function from the website. You can just copy paste the functionality and just specify the name of the columns that you want to search and specify quick search specification on the C#, and you will receive some kind of powerful search depending on the address. For example, if you want to have some name and you want to search by the name, of course, it should be implemented accordingly. Right now we have the name and we can specify the address, email, etc. Moreover, we have some kind of features that call by, okay, let me go back. We have some sortable stuff here by default, so you can sort by the sign and you can sort by the number. It's also depends on when you set up this kind of property of sortable. I will show you in the code later. And you can specify some kind of format that you want to have the data represent here. You can specify how many rows per page. Of course, there is some kind of extendable here. We have some options to check. We have 25 here and etc. So we have 1,500 items and all of this composed here. Now let's see the same data into the Radzen. So Radzen framework provides us some different view of the data. As you can see here, some more stuff extendable and more stuff we can add. For example, different view of paginations, different view of we can able to let's say rows, columns, which is not able to the MudBlazor. Maybe right now it's actually happened at some point and the guys will develop it, but right now this functionality able and work on the Radzen data. For example, we have instead, of course, we have the sort stuff here, but we have filtering, which is filtering comes out from the box for the Blazor. For example, we have the filter which actually can specify for the contact name specifically, or you can just go to the price specifically and you can specify the price equals to specific value or and less or less than or greater than. So it's powerful features that you can specify and apply and to see the data. So it's really cool for me, as in my opinion. That's actually basic stuff. As you can see, we can go through, interact through the page and go through one by one, or you can specify to the last one and to the second one. Of course, this is maintainable and all of this stuff can be specified for your requirements, but that's actually my goal here, to understand and that you should see the vision of this and how it actually look like. So if we go right now to the QuickGrid, it's empty. And I propose you, let's do it together. Okay, let me first show you the structure of the code for the MudBlazor and Radzen, and then we will build together the QuickGrid. Okay, so as you can see here, we have different interesting parts here. So MudBlazor itself have some kind of structure of the code which really close to the Xelm, if you're familiar with WPF. So we have some kind of tags which called like mood container. That's the containers that you can see. It's specifically for MudBlazor. Let me just demonstrate you back again. So that's the mood containers. They call it as a mood container. And inside this container, you can specify the table, you can specify the data and specific component which actually make the function for the server reloading in case if you want to search something. Of course, you can specify the height, you can specify the width, you can specify the horizontal scroll bar or vertical scroll bar whenever. So all of this is available here. You can just type it, and that will actually, you will see it in case if it's actually related to this mood table. You have some kind of toolbar component and header component, and this actually specify you the columns that you want to move to your table, and the row template is actually the content. Of course, a lot of stuff here, like a no records content, for example, you want to find something, but you can specify that, okay, something not found, some loading content, and a lot of stuff here. Pager content, so this is related to pagination, and the code block actually contains the elements that you are trying to search and you're trying to insert. For example, this part of code is just getting the data from the JSON file. Server load, as I mentioned, we have the simulation for the search. And for example, if you want to simulate the search by the address on email, or at some point you will add new column here, you just need to enter new row, which will specify that this kind of columns should contain your search strings and make appropriate coding stuff here. And so on and so forth. So all this stuff comes from the MudBlazor. You can just get it, copy into your Razor component locally, just manipulate with the data, just adopt it to your data, and that's it. Now let me quickly show you what is Radzen blocks here. So that's actually the full Radzen component code. You can see this slightly different from the MudBlazor because Radzen data and runs a table. Let's say it's called runs a data grid. It takes less code. That's why it's more preferable to use. It's easy to add the new columns. For example, we just add a new Radzen data grid tag and create the new row for this inside the columns specific here. So inside the columns tag, and that's it. For example, you will have new columns which will call registered after or up registered or some new date or a new email or a new phone. For example, you just add here the row and that's it. And you should just adopt the get elements from the data and push it here. Nothing more exciting. So all of the functionality comes through the Radzen data grid filtering here and the options here that are available. You can see you can specify column resize, true or false, alternative rows. You can specify the filter mode. So filter mode is actually by default inserted here, but it can be different one. It can be advanced. It can be just a simple one. Depends on your requirements, etc. You can specify when the elements should be pager contains on the left, on the right, etc. Do you need this pagination or not? Let me just quickly show you how the Radzen data looks like. So you see, you have more presentable view, less code, and really easy maintained stuff instead of the MudBlazor. But MudBlazor have its own. Okay, let me close this one. Have its own advantages. Okay, now let me return back to the QuickGrid. Okay, so what about the QuickGrid? I made just a mock-up for the Razor component. How I create the Razor component? I just added a new component or the new item. sorry, it's not the class. For example, I want to add a new page. Inside the page, I get the add, and I can here by default get a razor component. It will give you the template for adding razor component. It's the same as you would just simply add class, but you will receive one file with the extension .razor, and that's it, like a razor component. So I added it. By the .NET 8, it allows me to add the QuickGrid component inside the ASP.NET Core. As you can see here, this kind of components related to Blazor right now available in ASP.NET Core namespace under the Microsoft. That's what I'm talking about. So that's what I mentioned. This is the extendable feature of the ASP.NET Core, if we're talking about the Blazor. Okay, so I made some kind of mockups when I get in the data from the and push the elements into the new list, and let's make it quick together the code for the QuickGrid. So I have some kind of presentation stuff to do. So here we have just the type of the code. I inserted only 5 columns here. So we have the tag QuickGrid. We can specify the items which should be as queryable. And you can specify the property here as a property column by the column and specify it should be sortable or not. Let me remove the sortable for the ID. It's not required, but let me, for example, and save it. Okay, let me just present it to you how it goes. So it's just a really, really basic stuff which is showing 5 columns from the data, nothing more. And it's 4 of them right now should be sortable by the number, sign, contact name, and active. Okay, let's wait for less than a minute. It will be built quickly. And that's, so my point to show you that that's actually the mostly whole of the code that you can specify and to show the data through the QuickGrid instead of the Radzen and instead of the MudBlazor. That's component of the Microsoft that should be presented in .NET 8. So right now it's not available for .NET 7. Okay, let me reload the page and let's go to the QuickGrid. Okay, let's wait for a while. So here we have 5 columns. We have ID, number, sign, contact name, and is active. Right now it looks a bit ugly. So 1,500 items comes to one page. We can save the scroll, but it's not really suitable. Let me extend a bit. Let me add the paginator. So pagination state. Here is this piece of some codes that add the pagination state, and we can specify here the items per page. We can have it 15 or we can have it 20. It depends. It will extend to you this kind of grid for you. Okay, let me then add the paginator. So that's the common stuff that actually make this kind of pagination. And we forgot one more thing, that we specify the pagination here. This also will be the pagination state, specifically for QuickGrid. It should be also covered here. Okay, let me click on the build and let's see the results. So again, we just add just 2 rows for pagination and it should be working. You can manipulate it from the code directly. You can specify different items per page, etc. So how it will look? Let's see. Okay, now we have a bit more comfortable use. So we have a pagination for out from the box from the Microsoft. We have 75 pages for 20 elements, and that's actually gives you the sortable stuff. For example, if you click on the sort, you can specify by the sign, you can specify by the number, but I removed from the ID, so it's not there. This is actually interesting to use and more comfortable. But let's me add one more column. Let's say that I have one more column to get from the data, and data comes me with a new set of columns. So what I should do, I just add the new row and specify what kind of columns I should add. It will be address. Of course, if it should be sortable or not. And we have a lot of more items here to add. For example, this should be different context, different format. We can specify what kind of item here. We can specify the title and etc. Let me save it and let me run it. So we just easily add the column by the one row. Let's see the results. Let's wait for it will be reloading for a couple of seconds. Okay, it's reloading. Yeah, we have address here. It should be sortable, so it's fine and it works. You can specify the also widths and heights with the specific column whenever you need. But right now it's extendable automatically. We don't have the full list. You can specify the height or the width, exactly the QuickGrid itself by the specific properties inside. So as you can see here, this code is actually less than Radzen grid and actually more or less than the MudBlazor. That's how it actually defines the steps to you should work with the grids. But it's actually up to you which kind of grids and which kind of components you will choose. You can, if you prefer to work with the pure HTML, which is fetch data, when you can specify the table trth, it's up to you. That's also fine, and it can be also inserted inside any of the Razor page. For example, if you want to insert the fetch data, you can just copy or push full element to the another Razor component, and it will work. Okay, now let me go quickly through the unit testing. So let me show you the quick test, what I actually work with the, let me show you, this is called the B unit test. So this is the test related to the counter page. As you can see here, we have some kind of test that I prepare for you. It's called counter should increment when selected. For example, let's say that we have a range, some kind of test context, and if inside this context we render the counter component. That's actually component comes through the Blazor application. And then we should find the parameter by the code paragraph by the code p, which defined here as where it's called with the button, and this is actually here state p role status current count. So that's actually he trying to get. Also by the, for example, to provide you more visual stuff, how it actually look like, I will add you the simple buttons by the framework. So for example, I added the click me for this pure Blazor HTML. Also added the same button by the MudBlazor, and we'll add the button for the Radzen. I will present you quickly right now. But let's return back to the test. So in the range part, we just render the counter. In the act, we simulate the click of this component, of this button actually, and then you see cut find button, it find the button inside the component and make the click, and then this actually should render the and should change the paragraph element, and it should be exactly as for current count should be 1. So I should match that when I make the click, I increment 0 to 1, and it should be current count to 1, which is actually obvious stuff to do. Okay, let me open the test explorer and make it run it. Okay, I have test explorer. Let me present you that this goes fine. And it actually should be a success. But let's wait for a second. Before that, let me show you the buttons that I prepared for you for presentation. If I go back to the counter, okay, now you can see the different type of buttons by default provided by the framework. That's actually pure just button based on the HTML. That's the basic button for Blazor. And when you see when you navigate to this button, it will highlight some background font here. And the Radzen button just by default have a big primary stuff with some changes on the name of the actually that kind of button. You see there is a different styles and different views how it goes. You can just it have the same functionality, so nothing changed. It's just a presentation layer. But let's go back to the Visual Studio. Okay, it's still running, but I think that we should see the results soon. Okay, test discovery finished. One test found. Okay, it's green. it's success. But let's say that we have mistake, and right now we should expect current count 2, but we just make a mistake. We make the 1 click from the 0, but we should expect 2. And if we run it, when you run it, so my expectation is that it will fail because we will make 1 click. Of course, that's obvious. When we make 1 click, but we expect current count is 2, it will give you the appropriate error. Let me just simulate this. So that's the whole thing about the BUnit stuff, and that's actually how BUnit works. As far as I know, BUnit is just related for the Blazor, and they kept the letter B. It's actually give us the appropriate naming that. Okay, so HTML comparison failed. The following errors were found. Text is different. Exactly. So we make the 1 click, but text is different. For this one, just a demo here. Let me simulate another click. So we just make 2 clicks. Let me save it and let me run it. Okay, so it goes fine. Right now we make the 2 clicks, we render again the page, we simulate 2 clicks on the buttons, and then we should expect that the current count is 2 and the text in this kind of paragraph element should be the same. Let's see the results quickly. Okay, now it's success. That's all for the test. And that's all for me. Let me go back to the presentation. So now we need just to uh, close the stuff that we actually see today. It's about the Blazor, the latest what we have on .NET 7, and the new features that we have on .NET 8. This is related to QuickGrid, and this is related to loading web progress. Of course, we cannot cover all of this stuff because they are really specific, but as far as I know, on .NET 7, they improved the debugging, they improved the multi-threading, and the new .NET 8 should be presented as Blazor United. I'm not familiar with the details, but it should be covered Blazor WebAssembly, Blazor Server together. It's really interesting. So if you have time, just going through the Microsoft .NET conference, which is coming to November, with the .NET 8 presentation, and we will see what is actually changes to we will have. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you for watching, and stay in touch. Goodbye.